What's going on, everybody? It's your man Louie T here with a brand spanking new installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Got a lot to get to tonight. We talked about the wide receiver position, in particular, Justin Jefferson and some of the higher paid receivers in the league to that point. And I said Justin Jefferson. I don't know what the Vikings are waiting on, but the longer they wait, the higher the price goes up. No reason in continuing to wait. Get the deal done. What happened? They got the deal done. Now the question begs, and we'll talk about Justin Jefferson's deal, what that means for the rest of the receiver position, guys like CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Ayuk holding out of mandatory minis. Standard operating procedure, by the way. Should anybody get a deal north of Justin Jefferson's 4-year, $140 million contract extension? We'll talk about that. Christian McCaffrey just got some big-time money. We'll talk about that. Michael Parsons isn't at Cowboys mandatory minis. So a lot of discussion about some things as we get closer to some of those deadlines. You know how this goes. We'll talk about all of it and then some here on the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 423rd installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Of course, I'm your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, a lot to discuss on today's show, kind of set the table a little bit already, but also want to add in NBA Finals start on Thursday. So lots to discuss there. I'm going to give you my preview tonight of the series because we won't meet again prior to the NBA Finals starting. I don't want to step on the toes of the finals at all in any capacity. So I'm going to try to work my late night schedule around the finals, being that we're not going to be on that every other night format now. I think, if I'm not mistaken, finals games, there's usually 2 days between each game. So the first game is on Thursday. I think the second game will be Sunday night. So, and then you probably won't have, and then they'll change venue. So you'll probably get an extra day. So you probably won't have game 3 until Wednesday, is my guess. So I'll try to work my schedule around the NBA Finals because I want to be able to sit there. And, finals games start later than regular games. So most NBA Finals games are going to start 9:30-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. So you're not going to finish those games until on the East Coast after 11 o'clock, closer to 12, depending on how the game goes, how many challenges, stoppages, et cetera, happens throughout the game. So I'll be mindful of that moving forward. So we'll discuss that tonight. We'll discuss, some contract situations, some little tidbits. I don't want to get into the particulars of the rookie quarterbacks. We'll talk more about them, but I know you guys saw that Jacoby Brissett has been named QB1 in New England. Not a surprise. I think most people felt like whomever took Drake May, he was going to have to sit for a little while. So I don't know why people are all up in arms, this, that, and the third. We all assumed that this was going to be what happened, which is why New England signed Jacoby Brissett. But we'll talk more about that on a separate podcast, right? I know you guys saw this, and, I'm getting off topic a bit. But did you guys see that Treylon Burks was running down as a gunner on punts at OTAs? Anyway, I told y'all he was trash. But anyway, he had his moments. That Green Bay game on a Thursday night in his rookie season, that was the one brief glimmer of hope I had for him. I didn't like him coming out of Arkansas. Couldn't stand him. Anyway, I wanted him to prove me wrong. We can discuss that another time. Anyway, let's get let's jump into the NBA Finals real quick. So, yeah, Door Gunner, there were a lot of people, vouching for this man to be the pick over Jahan Dotson. That's craziness. It was craziness then. We weren't talking about Jahan Dotson, but we were talking about, Olave and, some of those other guys, both Ohio State guys that year, and Wilson on Olave. And I think there was even conversation of Jamerson Williams, who, wasn't even going to be ready at the start of the season. But I don't think a lot of people were talking about Jahan, but there were people talking about Treylon Burks. I was like, what? No way. Anyway, I digress. NBA Finals. I think we got it right this year. I think these are the two best teams throughout the postseason on both sides. And I know that's easy to say because they made it to the finals, right? I think that's one of the most overrated statements one can make. Oh, I think they got it right. These are the two best teams in each comp. Duh, that's why they're in the finals. But that's not always the case. Sometimes you feel like maybe injuries played a massive part in why a team was able to advance and succeed. Or you look at a series and you say, look, if this circumstance didn't happen, or if that didn't happen, or if it, this, that, and the third didn't take place, or these games came down to the wire and they just happened to win them, but I don't think they were the better team. You could make an argument that sometimes that's in fact the case. That's not the case here. The Dallas Mavericks were the best team in the Western Conference playoffs this year. If you look at the competition, you look at the road that they had to travel to get where they got. The only team you could argue that had to go a tougher route was the team they played in the Western Conference Finals. And that was the Minnesota Timberwolves. Timberwolves had to take out the defending NBA champions. Timberwolves had to take out the Phoenix Suns, even though the Suns were disjointed. They didn't have a point guard. They had a lot of issues. They still had Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker. It was going to be no easy feat, and they disposed of them and dispatched them in 4 games. But when you look at what Dallas had to do in the road that they traveled, OKC was the number 1 seed. No one thought they were going to the finals this year, but they still were the number 1 seed for a reason, and they were a damn good basketball team. And it was going to take a lot to dispatch of them, and they did in 6 games. They took care of the Clippers, who a lot of people thought, if Kawhi Leonard was healthy, could be a team to be reckoned with in the West. Obviously, he wasn't healthy. When is he ever healthy? And so they were able to take care of them in 6 games. And then, obviously, what they did with Minnesota, hard-fought series. They were down in 3 of the 4 wins with 5 minutes left in the ball game, less than 5 minutes to go. In 3 of the 4 wins that they had in the series, they were down and had to rally and finish up on these 8-1 runs and 12-2 runs to win these ball games. So you could argue that Minnesota was the better team. I don't think so. They didn't have the experience. I'm big on NBA postseason experience. You have to have it. There's no way around it. You can't fake it. You can't try and manufacture it. You either have it or you don't. And Luka had been to a Western Conference Finals before. Kyrie's won an NBA championship before. So the experience was on their side. No one on the Minnesota Timberwolves had been to an NBA Finals, and only Mike Conley had been to a Western Conference Finals or a Finals of any note, and he had been swept the last time he got there. So Dallas, to me, was the better team, and we knew Boston was coming out of the East. They just had to stay healthy. They did lose Porzingis in the first series, but they had the path of least resistance. A lot's been made of that. Something that I don't like. Speaking of why, we're on the subject of the Celtics. Let me just say that I hate that this narrative. They keep trying to pit Jason Tatum against Jaylen Brown. It's almost like they don't want these two to coexist, and I just hate this narrative that these two don't like each other or there's some kind of animosity or jealousy. That shit that ESPN was doing was gross. The whole, was Jason Tatum not excited for Jaylen Brown when he won? Look at all of his teammates. Look how happy they are. Look at Jason Tatum. He doesn't look happy. And then they spotlight his face. He's smiling, but he's not like overly giddy. But Jason Tatum isn't an overly giddy type of guy. Like, this goes back to his Duke days. I'm a Duke fan. I know that this man's temperament isn't one of, super smiling, cheesing all. He was happy. Like, the fact that they tried to turn this into some kind of sideways narrative about him being jealous or, having some issue with Jaylen Brown being named the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Boy, I hate I hate the 4-letter. God, it is disgusting how they conduct business. But the Celtics were the best team. There is a real conversation about the path that they took to the NBA Finals. It was trash. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not degrading them. I'm not knocking. You can only beat who they put in front of you. It's not their fault that Jimmy Butler got hurt, right, in the play-in tournament. That's not their fault. It's not their fault that Donovan Mitchell couldn't finish the series and that Jared Allen got hurt and couldn't play. That's not their fault. They were going to beat them anyway, whether those guys were healthy or not. Just made it easier. It wasn't their fault that Tyrese Halliburton got hurt. Not their fault. They're going to beat them anyway. Just made it easier. The problem with the Celtics' path was that nobody ever thought that the Heat, especially, I think that would have been their toughest challenge, is if Jimmy Butler was healthy, the Heat would have given them hell. Given them absolute hell. That could have easily been a 7-game series with a healthy Jimmy Butler. But outside of Miami, with a healthy Jimmy Butler, nobody respected Indiana. Nobody respected Cleveland. Those weren't going to be series whether they were fully healthy or not. That was the problem. The East wasn't that good. Once you take the Knicks out of the conversation and the 76ers out, nobody respected the Magic, the Cavs, the Pacers, none of those teams. So that was who was put in front of them, and they took care of business. But I'll tell you this much. There are a lot of people jumping on the Mavs ship, thinking that the Mavs are going to win this series because a lot of people don't trust the Celtics, and I get it. I'm one of them. I don't trust Jason Tatum. I don't trust Jaylen Brown, right? I trust him a little bit more, than I have in the past. But I generally don't trust the Celtics because, and people like to, because that's what we do with stars in the NBA in particular. We put everything on their shoulders. If the team succeeds, it's because of them. If the team fails, it's because of them. There's this weird Jason Tatum narrative, though. Like, if they don't win, it's all his fault. If they do win, well, he's got the better team. So it's like they don't want to give Jason Tatum any credit. I hate that shit. With a passion, I hate that shit. Like, come off of it already. Stop. Right? Now, I will tell you, sometimes he frustrates me when he's got a smaller defender on him and he wants to go to the elbow and he wants to, back him down and then shoot this 16-foot fadeaway. That shit bothers me when you have an advantage. Take his ass to the rim. Sometimes he's not aggressive enough. That does bother me. Sometimes he settles for the step back three when he doesn't have to. That bothers me. Yes. But to sit here and act as if Jason Tatum isn't that dude is laughable. Okay? That narrative is crazy and it needs to stop. But this Boston Celtics team is really good. And I am not of the mindset that they're not going to get it done this year. I just think they're a more talented team than overall. Now, this is the thing. There was this weird undercurrent heading into this series from not only Celtics fans, and not all of them, just a few of them. And I was like, what? Like, one of my best friends is a Celtics fan. Like, bro, what the hell are you talking about? Right? And then my other buddy, he's a Suns fan, but he had the same sentiment that our other friend had, and they hadn't even talked to one another. And I'm like, did y'all talk? Did y'all share this stupid ass idea together and kind of fortified it together, or are you both thinking this stupid separately? Let me know. I need answers. There was this notion between the two of them, and I've heard others say this, that the Celtics are somehow better off without Porzingis. Like, I think they can win the championship without Porzingis. What? What? Are you crazy? My friend's like, yeah, I don't know if I think he might come back and mess up team chemistry. Are you sick? Are you demented somehow? You really think you're going to win an NBA title against Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic without being able to pull their bigs away from the basket, without Kristaps Porzingis? Are you crazy? Have you gone mad? And my other friend's like, well, he's going to be rusty. Sure, he might be rusty for game one. And look, the Celtics were going to lose one of the first 2 games at home anyway. That's their move. They're the best road playoff team in the playoffs, haven't lost a single game on the road. They're going to lose a game at home. We know this to be a fact. It may even be game 1. I would not be shocked. They just can't lose both games at home, and they'll be fine. I almost expect them to lose one of the first 2 games. They should have lost to Indiana in game 1. They lost to the Heat in game 2, and they lost to the Cavs in game 2. This is their move. They lose home games. Okay? They've been a better road team than a home team. I can't explain it. I don't know what the hell it's about, but that's their move. And if it happens to coincide with Porzingis coming back, being a little rusty and a little off, because you can't simulate actual game action, and he hasn't played in a game since the first round of the NBA playoffs, so be it. If you're going to lose a game, have it be game 1. Porzingis doesn't shoot it well. They struggle a little bit and they lose. Okay, whatever. He bounces back in game 2. They bounce back. I expect Porzingis to be a massive part of this series. They can't win this series without him, in my estimation. They need his shooting. They need his floor spacing. You can't play Luke Cornett in this series. You can't get away with that shit. You can get away with it against Indiana. You can get away with it against Cleveland. You can't play Luke Cornett real meaningful minutes in the NBA Finals against the Dallas Mavericks. You can't do it. And you can't ask Al Horford to play 35 minutes in the NBA Finals. Can't do it. He's 90 years old. So you need Kristaps Porzingis so you can pull those bigs away from the basket. So you can pull those, because those guys are legitimate shot blockers. Both Gafford and Lively, both legitimate shot blockers, rim protectors. You need to pull them away from the basket. The only way that's going to happen is if Kristaps Porzingis is there, right? So I really think him coming back, getting back into the swing of things is going to be huge for this Celtics basketball team. And I don't want to try and minimize the importance of in-game strategy. How do you cover Kyrie? Luka's going to run pick and roll. What kind of coverage are you going to run? Are you going to run drop coverage, or do you blitz the pick and roll and force one of these bigs to make decisions and become playmakers? Like, there's different ways to go about it. Yes, all of that is going to come into play. But ultimately, when it's all said and done, what this series is going to come down to, like my dad, boss man, was like, yo, who's going to cover Kyrie? Who's going to cover, Luka? And I'm like, well, I expect, it to be, cover Luka by committee. It'll start out probably being Jaylen Brown, and then you'll probably just cycle in different defenders on him to disrupt his timing and hopefully, make it tough on him. But it's going to be mostly Jaylen Brown. It's why he was all NBA defensive player this year, right? So White is probably going to get the Kyrie Irving assignment, which he should, and we'll see how he does with that. I expect them to be able to do the things that they need to do. Here's the thing. If Boston is to win this series, it really comes down to one thing and one thing alone for me. And I don't want to simplify this, but this is who the Celtics are. If the Celtics shoot it well from 3, they're going to win this series. Point blank, end of the discussion. It's as simple as that. If the Celtics, who averaged over 43s per game, if they're going to shoot the 3. They've proven that in these playoffs. They proved it in the regular season. This is who they are. It's a part of their DNA. They're going to shoot the basketball. I'm just going to assume that they're going to average in this series 43 3-point attempts. That's just the number that I always seem to come up with in my head. 43 attempts. They're going to shoot it. If they knock down 21 of those 43 threes, you lose. That's 63 points. You lose. Really simple, right? They knock down 18 of them. You lose. That's 54 points. It is what it is, right? You defend, you hope they miss, you try to limit the open looks, and you hope they just don't go nuclear from three, right? If you can hold them to 11 of 43, you got a shot to beat them. You're probably going to beat them. Once they get to that 14, 15 range, right? As they creep up around league average, now you get into that danger zone. Anything above 15, you're in trouble. They get to 18, that's usually my barometer. They hit 18, they're probably going to win the game. They hit north of 20, you lose. And it's really that simple. If they can get Derek White to go back to his Heat series where he was just unconscious, the hoop looked like the ocean to that man, and get him shooting the ball again, right? Al Horford had a 7 3-point game against the Pacers where he just went off. Like, you can't expect him to do that every night, but there's one of those usually for him in a series, right? Of this magnitude, there's usually one of those games where Al just goes bananas. If you can get Tatum and Brown to shoot it well, like, you couldn't buy a basket from some of the guys off the bench. Like, what's my man's name? The white dude who can shoot it really well. He couldn't buy a basket in the Pacers series. Golly, he was shooting the ball horribly. If he comes in and he plays any minutes and he gets an open look, he's got to shoot it and shoot it well. Drew Holiday, we know, he is the ultimate role player. When he's supposed to be in there and they need his offense, he can deliver. Right? Hauser, that's his name, Sam Hauser. Thank you, Miss P. Sam Hauser couldn't buy a bucket in the last series. I almost felt bad for him, right? Because your one job, when you come in the game, your one job is to space the floor and knock down open threes. And he couldn't do it. He could not make a shot to save his life. And so, I mean, I saw him shooting air balls. This guy doesn't shoot air balls, right? So when he's in there, however his minutes look, I can't imagine him playing a whole ton of minutes, especially with Porzingis coming back. They might even shorten the rotation a little bit more now that you have a healthy Porzingis. Any minutes he gets, if he gets open looks, he needs to knock them down. If the Celtics are making threes, because while the Mavericks, who are a really good defensive team since the trade, getting both PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, they've been a really good defensive team, right? We know Derrick Jones is very capable of playing high-level defense. And so they've been really good on the defensive end. But the Celtics, with that 5-out offense and how they can spread you and how they can stress your defense, it's a different animal. This isn't the Timberwolves with Rudy Gobert and like Luka is going to have to work, right? Because the beauty of playing a team like Dallas, there's a 3-and-D guy that you don't have to guard on the offensive side. So Luka's able to kind of camp in the paint, kind of just hang around, catch his breath on the defensive end, because he's guarding, just throw out a random name, right? In the last series, a lot of times it was Jaden McDaniels. Jaden McDaniels is just camping in the corner as a 3-and-D guy. He's not moving. He's not cutting. He's not handling the ball. He's not dribbling. He's not making Luka work in any capacity. He's just standing there. So Luka doesn't have to do anything. You're not going to get away with that against the Celtics. Whomever you try, and they're probably going to try to put Luka on a Derek White or somebody that they expect to not be in a lot of the action. But the Celtics move. They cut. Guys are every guy on the court is a capable, 3-point shooter. Every guy on the court is capable of putting the ball on the floor and creating for themselves or others. So he's going to have to guard somebody. I don't know if you're going to be able to just hide Luka in the corner and just like, hey, you don't have to guard XYZ, right? They're going to have to make him work. That's, to me, the key. If you want Luka exhausted, you want him tired, make him guard, right? I think the Celtics are going to be able to do that. Make him guard somebody. Don't let him sit there and just kind of camp and be a help defender and, he's just standing there catching his breath. Make him work on the defensive end. So I really believe that this is the Celtics series to lose. They got the home court advantage. I don't know if that really means anything for them. They're more than capable of going on the road and winning. So I don't even know if home court really means all that much. But you rather play game 7 at home than on the road, right? This could be a 7-game series. I really, truly believe that the game 1 might be a wake-up call for them if they don't shoot it well, because they're going to realize this is way better than any team we saw on the Eastern Conference side of the bracket. Like, this is a big step up in level of competition, which they are fully aware of, dealing with Kyrie and Luka and PJ Washington and, Gafford and Lively and all of those guys. They understand the assignment. They understand that this is going to be tough. But the challenge is going to be there. Drew Holiday is going to probably draw the assignment of Kyrie. He'll probably get some Luka, some Luka coverage as well, and they'll switch it up. But he's the best defender, arguably perimeter defender in the NBA, and so you just expect him to take on the challenge of. I think he'd probably start out on Kyrie if I had to guess. But you got 2 all defensive players. I mean, what a luxury to have. If you're the Celtics, shit, you really got 3. I mean, I know that Derek White and I think it was Jaylen Brown both got all defensive second team, but we all know what Drew Holiday is. Like, are you serious? So they're going to be able to make it tough on Luka and Kyrie, and all 3 of those guys are capable of guarding those 2 guys. Now, Luka's going to be he's going to have an advantage over, say, a guy like Derek White. But even White's going to make it tough on him, So it'll be an interesting series. If I'm a betting man, I'm betting on this going 7 games. I think this is a 7-game series. I could see it going 6 the Celtics way. I don't see it going 6 the Mavericks way. Although, if they stole the first 2 games in Boston, I'd change my tune very quickly and tell you that they could get this thing done in 6. Because winning both games in Boston would change the entire complexity. I'm not fazed if Boston drops one of these first 2 games at home. As a matter of fact, I'm building that into my prediction. I expect Boston to drop one of the first 2 games at home. They say that a series does not start until the road team wins a game. That's going to happen fairly quickly in this series. I'm not fazed by it because I know Boston is fully capable of going back and getting that game in game 3 or 4 and wrestling back home court advantage. So that doesn't bother me in the least. If they drop a second home game, now I start to worry. Right? Now I start to get a little nervous. So that's when I'll start to feel like, wait a minute. But I think it's going to be a really good series. I think that ultimately it's going to come down to makes or misses. That's what this is ultimately going to boil down to. If the Celtics are hitting their 3, they're a superior 3-point shooting team. We saw the graphic last series of how many Celtic players hit over 100. What was it? 100 threes on the season, I believe. They had 7 guys make over 100 3. Like, Do you know how insane that is? Like, let that sink in. What? So, if they're knocking them down, the Mavericks can't keep up. They don't shoot it from deep like that. They do a lot of their damage inside the arc. They're a 2-point team, and they'll beat you up in the paint if you allow them to. Luka can get in there and get whatever shot he wants. Kyrie's one of the best finishers we've ever seen in NBA history. They throw the lobs to those big guys. At one point, Derek Lively was 13 of 13 in the Timberwolves series. He hadn't missed a shot because he was pretty much catching all dunks and lobs, right? So they can beat you up inside if you allow them to. But you making twos versus them making threes, you can't win, right? So we'll see. I mean, the beauty of knocking down threes is then you put stress on guys like Derek Jones and PJ Washington and Maxi Kleba and other guys. You put pressure on them to have to now knock down shots. Now we need them to make threes. You know, Jaden Hardy is a guy that you got to watch coming off the bench. He can get hot in a heartbeat, right? And cook you in 14 minutes. He can put in 15 points. But it's going to become imperative that those guys knock down shots if the Celtics are making threes, and then that pressure mounts. If they're not making threes, you fall right into the Mavericks' wheelhouse. So, anyway, I digress. Let's get to today's gym dropping session, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T8. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. Justin Jefferson, we talked about the wide receiver position in particular and the value of that position, and would it decrease over the next 5 to 10 years? Would it become the running back position in effect by teams opting to go for the mid-level receiver, the really good receiver, versus paying top dollar to these elite-like receivers? I've been a proponent of, if you're upper echelon elite, I'm willing to pay you top dollar. You know, those kind of guys are true difference makers. 3-level wide receivers, guys that not only can hurt you on a 5-yard, hitch or slant, can hurt you over the middle on an intermediate dig route, but also can take the top off on a straight 9-ball or deep post or a skinny post or a deep over route, whatever. You're in trouble, right? Wherever they touch it. There's levels to this shit. I talked about it already. Justin Jefferson might be the best receiver I've ever seen this early in his career. I didn't watch Jerry Rice at the beginning of his career. I saw most of Jerry Rice's career. Most of it, because Jerry played for so long. But early Jerry, I didn't see early Jerry. Pretty sure he was just as dynamic and game-changing back then, when there was only 2 receivers on the field and he was just running a bunch of slants and killing people. I remember I used to try to run my slants like Jerry Rice, because you couldn't stop Jerry Rice from catching a slant and murking. Remember, Jerry Rice wasn't a 4.4 guy, right? I think Jerry Rice might have been like a 4.65 guy. Couldn't tell on those slants, though. Anyway, what Justin Jefferson has done in his first, 3 years, 4 years now in the league is ridiculous. I talked about the production. I talked about the numbers and how, the increments of 20, the catches all ending in 8, started out with 68 his rookie, or 68 this past year, because he was injured and missed like 7 games or whatever. His rookie season, he had 88. His second season, he had 108. And his third season, he had 128. And the numbers that he's put up are cartoonish. You know, started out with 14, then went to 16, and then got to 18. Ridiculous. Only played in, 10 games or whatever this year and still had 1,000 yards. Well, he finally got paid. And to me, he's the high watermark guy. He's the one that sets the tone for everyone else's contract. 4 years, $140 million extension. That's $35 million per for Justin Jefferson. Well-deserved. Okay, that's the new high mark, right? Didn't know how high he'd get. Didn't know if that number would be 36 or 37 or maybe even 38 per. The number's 35. Now, my question is, should anybody exceed the $35 million AVV that Justin Jefferson just got from the Minnesota Vikings? That is my question. Guys like Brandon Ayuk and CeeDee Lamb are currently holding out of their teams mandatory minis. Everybody right now is essentially at mandatory minis or some form of OTAs. And guys are holding out. Michael Parsons is holding out in Dallas as well. And holding out might be the wrong term for Michael Parsons. He wants to be paid. But just like CeeDee Lamb, I fully expect him to show up at camp when Dallas reports to Oxnard in late July, right? This is standard operating procedure, by the way. When guys who want to be paid don't show up for camp, CBA states that, you can do whatever you want in the offseason, but come camp time, that's when we start really cracking down. And that's why we've seen guys hold in, not out, right? Where you show up, you're present, but you're not participating, right? That's the way around the CBA language and the way teams are trying to fine you for not showing up. No, I'll show up. I just won't do anything. So I've heard people trying to make cases for guys like Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb in particular. Brandon Ayuk, to me, his number should be more around the Amon-Ra St. Brown deal. That's where he belongs. That's where he lives, to me, from a contractual standpoint. He should live in that neighborhood. That's a good neighborhood to be in. Nice, middle class, hell, slightly above middle class neighborhood, right? You're not quite with the 5%ers, but you're a step down from them. It's a really nice neighborhood. It's gated community. Usually nothing crazy happens there. Good space, got plenty of yard. It's a really, really good place to be, right? CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase, however, are with the 5 to 1%ers. That's a different neighborhood, right? That one, you've actually got a security guard on post as you're trying to go in, and you've got to check with the security guard first. He's got to check you out. If you want to go in and visit somebody, he's first got to establish that, hey, you've got a visitor, and you got to put it on the sheet that I'm going to have a visitor today. It's that kind of community. And we're talking about acres upon acres upon acres of space. You got to get in your car to go to your next door neighbor's house. You got to get in your car, unless you want a nice little workout to get to the mailbox. Well, that's where only a select few receivers live. But I still think Justin Jefferson should have the biggest house in that neighborhood. Let's look at CeeDee Lamb's numbers, right? I think they're good numbers. Don't get me wrong. They're not Justin Jefferson numbers, right? They're close, though. They're close. So CeeDee Lamb, rookie season, 74 catches, 935 yards. So he didn't hit 1,000 in his rookie season. Mind you, Dak got injured that year. So there was really no Dak for the latter portion of the 2020 season. 2021, 79 catches, 1,102 yards, 6 touchdowns. He had 5 in his rookie season. So 6 in his second campaign. 2022, this is where you see the massive uptick start to begin. 107 catches, 1,359 yards, 9 touchdowns. And then last year, he went bananas, 135 catches, 1,749 yards, and 12 touchdowns. So now he's really starting to, assert himself as a dominant alpha receiver. The 12 touchdowns are huge because a lot of guys in the league put up numbers from a catch and yards perspective. They don't post a lot of touchdowns, though, and CeeDee Lamb does. So to me, he's the closest guy right now, right? Like, I feel like Devontae Adams is probably trending downwards. He was posting some cartoonish numbers at one point with Aaron Rodgers, but he's on the downswing of his career, I believe. The best of Devontae Adams is probably come and gone. Tyreek Hill is still going to post crazy numbers, but, there's a cap and a ceiling on what he's going to do because he's in Miami with Tua. But also, he's already starting to talk about retirement. Anytime a guy's starting to do that, I start to question, how much longer can I rely on you, right? CeeDee Lamb is going into his, second contract. Like, he's going into the prime of his career, just like Justin Jefferson, just like Jamar Chase. To me, they're in a different conversation than Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams and those guys who've already gone into their second, they're in their third contracts, et cetera, et cetera. Like, these guys are going into the prime of their careers. So CeeDee Lamb would be, to me, like, and just for context, so I've given you CeeDee's numbers. Let me just give you Jamar Chase's numbers. And you know what? I think his numbers are a bit disappointing when you start, sizing them up next to guys like CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson, because everybody just automatically puts him in that conversation. And I don't know that his numbers warrant that, right? So check this out. Now, this is the difference. All of the receivers we've talked about have 4 years under their belt. Chase only has 3. So this year could be that crazy, ridiculous year that puts him right in that conversation because he's missing that year. All the other years are kind of right where they need to be. He's missing that 1,100-1,800-yard season where you go, okay, yeah, he belongs in that conversation too, right? So 2021, his rookie season was his best season. He jumped onto the scene, did not disappoint, 81 catches, 1,455 yards, 13 touchdowns, 18 yards per catch. Insane numbers, right, for a rookie. How do you follow that up? Mind you, they went to the Super Bowl in his rookie season, right? How do you follow that up? 87 catches, only 1,046 yards. So the yards come down by almost 400 yards. As a matter of fact, by over 400 yards. And then only 9 touchdowns, still a good number, right? But 18 yards per catch in your rookie season to 12. Like, that's the number that you go, whoa, what's going on? So probably saw some, different coverages, a little bit more, double teams, safety help over the top, over Jamar Chase, et cetera, et cetera. Excuse me, you still got to find ways. You don't think Justin Jefferson's seeing double teams? You don't think he's seeing bracket coverage? But he's still putting up massive numbers, right? Excuse me. And also keep in mind that Justin Jefferson has had consistent play at quarterback with Kirk Cousins, while Jamar Chase has had Joe Burrow going in and out of the lineup. In his 1 year where Joe Burrow was fully healthy, which was 2021, excuse me, he had 1,455 yards. Burrow was banged up in 2022. Burrow was banged up in 2023. So was Jamar Chase. 2023, Chase had, now this was impressive because of him having to do it with a collection of quarterbacks. 100 catches, 1,216 yards, 7 touchdowns. He dealt with some injuries himself, but Joe Burrow being out for much of the season is impressive for him to do that. But we're still waiting on that 16, 17, 1,800-yard season. If you want to be in that conversation with CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson, you want to be paid like those guys, I need one of those ridiculous seasons where everybody looks and says, okay, yeah, he's one of those dudes too, right? These numbers don't say that. These numbers suggest you live in a neighborhood with Brandon Ayuk and Amon-Ra St. Brown and those dudes, and that's a good neighborhood. But if you want us to put you in a neighborhood with CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill and, some guys are about to move out. Like, they're like, yeah, property value here is, okay, but I think I'm going to get out while the getting's good. I think I'm going to move. Like Devontae Adams, he's about to sell his property in that neighborhood. Maybe you could buy his house. I need a big season if you're going to buy his house, though. Right? So, Stephon Diggs was once living there. He's like, yeah, think I'm going to sell the house now, get what I can and get out. He moved out of the neighborhood. Somebody can occupy his dwelling, right? Who's going to step up and move in, right? Could be Jamar Chase. I think most people just put him in there. I'm not just putting him in there. He's going to have to earn his way into that neighborhood. So I think this is going to be a big season for Jamar Chase. It has to be. You want to be paid like what CeeDee is going to get broken off. But I don't think CeeDee Lamb should exceed, and nor should any other receiver right now exceed Justin Jefferson. Eventually, somebody will, because the laws of NFL cap and contracts suggest that the number's just going to continue to go up for the cap. So the contracts are just going to go up. But until we get to that point where somebody is worthy of that kind of a deal and they need to exceed Justin, we're not there yet. Justin Jefferson set the bar for this offseason, and I could argue that while somebody may have more in aggregate, you shouldn't be getting a deal that AAV-wise is greater than Justin Jefferson at $35 million. I could make that argument. Let's look at A.J. Brown's numbers for a second. I know he's been posting some big numbers, and I know he got that ridiculous contract, and we were talking about that here recently, and he's been a dog since he got to Philadelphia. He was a dog in Tennessee. So started his career out with 2,000-yard seasons, 52 catches, 1,051 yards, 8 touchdowns. Then his second year, 70 catches, 1,075 yards, and 11 touchdowns. The big number in his rookie season, 20 yards per catch. Wowzers. Then in 2021 with the Titans, 63 catches, 869 yards, 5 touchdowns. I think he dealt with some injuries, and I think they had some injuries at the quarterback position with Ryan Tannehill. And I think things got a little murky there. That's when he got traded. He went to Philadelphia and just blew the hell up. 88 catches, which was a career high at the time, 1,496 yards, so almost 1,500 yards, 17 yards per catch, 11 touchdowns. And then last year, 106 catches, 1,456 yards, 13.7, so not one of his better seasons. As a matter of fact, that's the lowest season he's had in his career from an average per catch standpoint, and 7 touchdowns. Still gaudy numbers. He, to me, it's hard to go 1,400 2 years in a row. And if he does it again, even though there's no 16, 17, if he goes 14, 14, and 14, there's something to be said about that level of consistency at that number. To me, anything north of 1,350 yards, you killed it, crushed it. And I get it with the addition of the extra game. It makes it more likely that guys are going to be able to have 14 and 15 and 1,600 yard seasons. You also got to play all 17 games to take advantage of that extra game. But with that said, if you play all 17 games, you too can have a uptick in your production. And so that also needs to be taken into consideration. But it's still no small feat to have 1,400 yards. I don't care if it's a 16, 17, or, in the future an 18-game schedule. 1,400 yards is still tough to come by in the NFL. He's done it 2 years in a row. He does it again, and I don't have a problem with him moving into that neighborhood with Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb, right? But I'm going to need him to do it one more time. because there's no 16 or 1700 season in there, or in the case of Justin Jefferson, an 18 piece, right? So you're not doing it on that scale, then you just got to beat them up with consistency. So do it again, 1400 again, right? CD's got a 17 on his resume. After hitting 13, he went to 17. So he's in that stratosphere. You got to go. You're not going to, it doesn't seem like you're going that high. Well, then hit 14 again. And then you can move into that neighborhood with Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb. I think CeeDee's the only guy that should challenge Justin Jefferson. If we talk about, slotting these receivers where they belong, Justin set the watermark, the high bar at 35 million AAV. CeeDee should probably hit 34 and a half, 34. And then I think everybody else should kind of fall in beneath, right, as of right now. We'll see what Jamar Chase does this year. He goes bonkers and he goes for 1762 or he goes for 1804. Then he can get that number, right around where Justin is. But he's going to have to put up a big year to do so, right? But he's in that same conversation I talked about with Justin Jefferson, because right now I still can't foresee someone catching Mike Evans 10 straight years of 1,000 yards to start your career, because at some point you're going to get hurt or your quarterback play is going to suck and it's going to affect you. And what Evans was able to do without elite quarterback play until he got to Tom Brady for 2 years, right? He had Tom Brady for 2 years, or was it 3? I think it was 3 years. He had Tom Brady for. Outside of that, it was Jameis Winston. It was Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's been, Baker Mayfield. It's been just a smorgasbord of quarterbacks, and he still found a way to get to 1,000 yards no matter what. It's a hard thing to do. And what that also suggests is that, hey, you playing football. I know I can count on you to lace them up just about every single week because it's tough in this league. We'll see if anybody comes even remotely close to that number. Those two seem to be guys that right now have the best chance of doing so. CeeDee didn't have a 1,000-yard season his first year in the league. Neither did A.J. Brown. A.J. had that year in 2021 where he didn't hit 1,000. So when we're talking about the consistency of it, it's Justin Jefferson, it's Jamar Chase, it's those guys. But Justin's just doing it at a different level, which is why I don't think anybody should exceed his extension that we just saw from an AV standpoint. So anyway, I digress. Let's go to our next segment of the show, and that's social media maneuvers. And let me just add one more thing. I think Brandon Ayuk will probably be the next guy to get paid if the 49ers are serious. We know Jerry has been known to play hardball and push it all the way up until deadlines. And if CeeDee decides to have a sit-in at camp, Jerry will try to talk that shit, but he knows he can't win anything without CeeDee Lamb. So part of the reason that the Cowboys basically did nothing in free agency this offseason is because they knew they had to get their ducks all in a row. They knew they had to start lining up their bread because they were going to have to pay both CeeDee Lamb and they were going to have to pay Micah Parsons. So Parsons, I believe, is going into year 4. So I think Jerry's going to make him wait. He might want a contract now, but if I'm not mistaken, this is going to be year 4. They're not going to pay him yet. Having that 5th-year option, Jerry's going to make sure that he exhausts all options before he has to pull out the checkbook. So CeeDee is going into, his final year of his rookie contract. So you have to get the deal done now, right? You don't want to go into a situation where CeeDee's an unrestricted free agent next year. You got to slap the franchise tag on him, yada, yada, yada. It could get messy. Then he's really like Dak Prescott. He's got you by the balls. Plus, you just want to put yourself in a position where The sooner you get it done, the better it is from you from a financial standpoint. The more guys get paid, the higher the price goes up, right? It's just how these numbers work, right? So it's the cost of doing business. Get it done sooner and you'll thank yourself later. You wait and it's going to cost you more. CD's probably next. But if the 49ers are serious, they can get a deal done with Ayuk. They can get a deal done. Speaking of the 49ers, I know y'all saw the Christian McCaffrey deal. Let's talk about that briefly, and then we'll get to the comment section. Speaking of the comment section, let's go ahead and throw this up here. If you're out there and you're new to the show, welcome. First and foremost, thank you for joining me. Hit the like button if you haven't already done so. Doesn't cost you a thing, but it helps this channel grow exponentially. So please do that. If you want your comment read on the air and it's pertinent and we have time, and we should have a little bit of time tonight to go through a few of these comments, use that hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. If it's pertinent, we'll discuss it. If it's not, we'll just gloss right over it. Right. If you want to ensure that your comment is read, super chats are the way to get that done. The super chat function is at the bottom right next to where you can comment. Hit that $sign. Make sure you put your comment in first before you cash it, because if you don't, you'll have an empty comment. So super chat function ensures not only that your comment is read and that we discuss it, but it also jumps you straight to the front of the line. So if you want to ensure that your comment is read, super chats are the only way to ensure that that gets done. So Christian McCaffrey, 49ers extended him a 2-year deal. So essentially what they did was they gave him some new money. Christian McCaffrey, by far and away, is the best running back in the NFL. He reestablished himself as that in San Francisco this last year and a half. They traded for him in the middle of the 2022 season, and he helped them not only make it to the playoffs, turn their season around, because they were struggling. If you recall, they were kind of struggling and trying to figure out some things and find their way. He comes in there, helps them get back on track. They make it to the NFC Championship game. Brock Purdy injures himself against the Eagles. They lose. McCaffrey. And there were questions. Remember, going into that 2022 season, we hadn't seen a healthy Christian McCaffrey since 2020, right? Since 2019, I believe. So there were questions about McCaffrey. Who is this guy? Is he even still that good anymore? We don't even know who this guy is. He's reestablished himself in San Francisco. Last year, he was ridiculous. Nobody was even remotely close to him in terms of impact at the running back position, and thus the 49ers paid him. It wasn't just that he was a good running back. He was also a dynamic pass catcher, which we know him to be as well. He was a touchdown machine. He was dynamic every single time he touched the football. He had a chance to really do damage. And he was the heart and soul of that 49ers offense. So they essentially just paid him as such. They took care of him. $38 million 2-year extension, essentially $19 million per. The necessity for this was he had no guaranteed money left on his current deal. So the 49ers could have essentially cut him and there would have been no financial loss on their end. He didn't get any guaranteed. All his money was essentially going to be in base salary. So in order to appease him, to reward him for what he's done in San Francisco over the last year and a half, and to give him his just due and to let him know we appreciate you, they gave him guarantee money and gave him a new 2-year deal, making him the highest paid running back. And I don't think, remember, we just watched an offseason where running backs were fighting over $8.5 million per year, right? Like, this was one of the deepest running back free agency classes in recent memory. Derrick Henry was available. Josh Jacobs was available. DeAndre Swift, was available. Tony Pollard was available. Aaron Jones was available. Like, I go on and on and on with the names of guys that were available this offseason that ended up getting paid some quality money. Austin Eckler ended up in Washington. This was a very deep running back class of free agents, various ages, different shapes, sizes, speeds, etc. Bottom line is Christian McCaffrey is looking down at the rest of the position and saying, hey, you know, Saquon Barkley was a free agent as well. Don't want to leave him out. Hey, y'all good down there? You know, because I don't know if there's another running back in the league making any more than 11 or 12 million per year. This man is at 19. I don't know if there's another back making any more than 12. You guys can fact check that and see. And then to make matters worse, who is going to even approach 19 over the next 3 to 4 years? The only name I can think of, if he turns out to be this ridiculous stud running back that he was drafted to be, is Bijan Robinson. That's not for another 3 years, though. And he's got to absolutely murder the league over the next 3 years. Because his rookie season, while solid, wasn't the needle mover that, you know, everyone thought it could be, especially with the way it started. He's got to murder the league over the next 3 years. And if he does that, then we might be able to have that conversation. But right now, I can't even see anybody getting remotely close to what the 49ers just did for Christian McCaffrey. So, let's get to the comment section. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Chris writes, hey, Lou. What's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise, as always. 3 questions. 1, what are your thoughts on JJ Redick potentially being the head coach of the Lakers? 2, who is your top 5 receivers in the NFL right now? 3, what impact does the Christian McCaffrey deal have on Brandon Ayuk and why? Let's take them in order. So JJ Redick. I think this is not by happenstance or coincidence. Now, let me just say, JJ Redick is one of the smartest basketball minds that I've seen recently over the last 3 to 4 years, right? So let's just establish that. Like, he played in the league for a number of years. He knows the game. He knows it from an analytical standpoint. He knows it from a fundamental standpoint. He knows it from an X's and O's standpoint. He knows how to get guys, you know, in their most. He knows how to get guys, to me, in their best spots to be the most efficient. I think he has a plan in mind when he sees teams and how they can be best, you know, utilized. So from a basketball mind perspective, he's brilliant. And that's why he has a podcast with LeBron James. LeBron James isn't going to just sit down and do a podcast with just anybody, because LeBron James is a basketball savant. His mind is different than anybody else's. LeBron James is one of those dudes that just sees the game so differently, recalls everything that happens. Like one of those dudes where you just go, oh, okay, yeah, he different. Like he sees the game differently. He's so smart. And there are very few that are on the level of a LeBron James. That said, JJ Redick is one of them. Intellectually, on a basketball level, high basketball IQ, as high as it gets. So I just want to establish that. But in saying that, don't for 1 second mistake the fact and think that it's coincidence that LeBron James has a podcast with JJ Redick. They're really good friends. And all of a sudden, JJ Redick, who has never coached in the NBA, and I'm not saying that it's impossible for a guy to go from never coaching in the league to being a head coach. Steve Kerr was never a coach in the league. He was actually broadcasting games, and he went from broadcasting games for TNT to being the head coach of the Golden State Warriors, and the rest is history. So it can happen, right? But Kerr was a little bit different. He played for two of the greatest head coaches in NBA history, and Phil Jackson and Greg Popovich. So he learned a lot and was able to kind of use the things that he learned in order to become a great head coach. I'm not saying that JJ Redick didn't go to the same school, but I don't know if JJ Redick's ever won an NBA title. I don't think he's been, coached by anybody that I would say is even in the same neighborhood or discussion as a Phil Jackson or a Greg Popovich. So there's that, right? Anyway, I think there's a lot to be said about the Lakers wanting to retain the services of LeBron James. LeBron is a massive draw. Even if he's 39 years old, LeBron still puts butts in seats. They want him to finish his career in LA. LeBron wants to finish his career. I mean, who are we kidding? He wants to finish his career in LA. Yeah, his agency and his homeboy, Rich, whatever his damn name is. I was about to call him Rich Porter. I know his name's not Rich Porter. I watch too much damn, too many movies and too much damn YouTube and crazy shit. But whatever Rich, his name is, they're going to talk up LeBron's free agency. He could do this and he can do that and yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, there's no other place that can provide LeBron the opportunities to continue to earn and spread his entrepreneurial wings, if you will, like LA can. He's been, I think, in these last 2 to 3 years when he's been in LA, he's been executive producer of more shows, and he's been able to devote more of his time to, YouTube channels and, his shows, the shop and all of that stuff that he's got, all of these different ventures that he's got going on. He's been able to pour more time into that because he was local and he has accessibility because he already lives in LA. I don't think he wants to uproot that. He brought his kids out there because the level of competition playing basketball was going to help them there and this, that, and the third. And so I think there's a lot that goes into the decision-making as you get older and you have kids. You have to start thinking about their futures as well. He's thinking about his future outside of basketball. He's been doing that for a number of years. I think he wants to stay in LA. He's just leveraging this opportunity to get the most he can out of the Lakers, which is smart, LeBron's always been a smart businessman. But also because if I'm LeBron James, I control everything. And if I am going to stay here, I do want to handpick my next head coach. And who better to do it than a guy that philosophically we see the game the same. I think this dude is brilliant, which is why I'm doing a podcast with him. I know he's going to put us, like LeBron didn't think Darvin Ham put them in the best positions to win. He wouldn't come out and say it, but LeBron is one of those dudes that if he doesn't respect you intellectually as a basketball mind, it's hard for him to then acquiesce to what it is you're asking him to do. Because if I think I'm smarter than you and I can do a better job, it's hard for me to then take cues and pointers from you. Sorry, not sorry. I know more about this than you do. Him and JJ Redick are on the same level in terms of basketball intellect and IQ, or damn close. And because of that, I think there's a respect level that goes with that. And he's one of his peers. And so I think that if you're going to try to retain LeBron James for the final 2-3 years, whatever he's got left in his NBA career, whatever he's got left in his NBA gas tank, JJ Redick is a great start to recruiting LeBron James back to LA. So that's what I think about that. JJ Redick, I can't say that he's qualified for the job. He's never been an NBA head coach before. He's never even been an assistant NBA head coach before. He knows basketball, though. He knows ball. And I do think this is one of many ploys to try to get LeBron James back. And so we'll see if JJ Redick is able to stand on his own too as an NBA head coach, because it's not just about X's and O's and knowing, how best to utilize certain players and certain actions and, how to maximize your roster. It's also managing personalities. That's 80% of being an NBA head coach is, do the players like you and respect you? Can you get guys to follow you? Can you be the leader that they need? Can you get on guys without them bitching and moaning and complaining and wanting you fired? But can you do it tactfully enough that they respect you and that they don't create a mutiny and get you fired? That's a hard, you got to win consistently enough to build up enough equity to where you are now the voice and the players don't have the power to get you fired. Like Eric Spoelstra had to earn the right to not be fired in Miami, even though he won all those championships. He had to earn that right. And once he did, he's a made man in Miami now. Eric Spoelstra's not going anywhere. He's one of the best coaches in the NBA. Greg Popovich won enough in San Antonio to where he can do whatever the hell he wants to do. He runs the show there. Kawhi wanted to bitch and complain, even though they're never winning anything without Kawhi. Maybe they will with Wemby, right? But they weren't going to win anything without Kawhi. They chose Pop over Kawhi, right? You got to get to that point. It's hard to get to that point unless you win. Or else your ass is Doc Rivers, right? Like, Doc only got one championship. And that's cool. And that gets you some sticking power in the league. It gets you more opportunities. But if it comes down to James Harden or Doc Rivers, we picking James Harden because you're just Doc Rivers, right? So let's see if JJ can establish himself on his own too. I think he's really there as a bargaining chip to help lure LeBron James back to LA. That's what I think. Next question. Who is your top 5 receivers in the NFL right now? In no particular order, I got Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, and make sure this number 5 guy. AJ Brown is hovering. He's like, me. I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. Let me just make sure. And go through all the teams real quick. Those 4 guys are definitely in. Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and CeeDee Lamb are definitely in. Okay. So let me go through all the other teams to make sure I'm not forgetting anybody. Commanders, Giants, Eagles, Cowboys. Gone through there. AJ Brown, I got you in the holding pattern right now. NFC North, Packers, no. Falcons, no. Or excuse me, NFC North. Packers, no. Vikings already got Justin Jefferson. Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown, not in that conversation. And Bears, no. Even though DJ Moore is doing some good things, no. NFC West, Cardinals, no. Rams, Cooper Kupp. If he didn't have this past year, I don't even know if he made it to 1,000 yards. Either of the last 2 seasons, matter of fact. Let me check and see. Maybe he made it this year. But the year before, I don't think he made it because he was dealing with so many injuries. Yeah, he hasn't made it the last 2 years. He was that 1,947 yard season in that Super Bowl year is ridiculous. But he's only, I don't think a lot of people realize it with Cooper Kupp. He only had 2,000 yard seasons in his career. Now he's hovering around a bunch of times, but that 1,900 yard season is ridiculous. But the last 2 years, he hasn't had 1,000 yards. And in 7 seasons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, he's only got 2,000 yard seasons. All right, just so we're clear on him. But no, that he's not in that conversation. Seahawks, no. Even though DK is really good, no. And in the 49ers. Brandon Ayuk, no. Right. So then the NFC South. Panthers, no. Falcons, no. Saints, no. And Bucks, Mike Evans, not in that conversation, though. Really good receiver, not top 5. So you go to the AFC. So A.J. Brown's still in the holding pattern right now. AFC East, Bills, no. Dolphins already have Tyreek Hill. Waddle not there yet. Same way, he's in that same conversation as like a 1B with Devontae Smith, right? Patriots, no. And the Jets, no. AFC North. We got Jamar Chase already in there for the Bengals. Ravens, no. Browns, no. And Steelers, no. AFC South. Texans, no. Colts, no. Jags, no. Titans, no. AFC West. Chiefs, no. Chargers, no. Raiders. What did Devontae do, man? It's so easy to, because he's not playing on a winning team, but he's still putting up numbers, I bet. I bet we go look at Devontae's numbers. I bet you he's still putting up numbers. So, mind you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're going into season 11 of Davante Adams. So his first year in Vegas, he had 100 catches for 1,516 yards, 14 touchdowns. It's just stupid, especially when you're catching passes from everybody, Jimmy Garoppolo and every other sorry quarterback you could think of in Vegas. And then last year it was even worse, right? 103 catches for 1,144 yards and 8 touchdowns. With that collection of trash heap that he was catching the football from. Man, it's hard for me to. I mean, before last year, he had 2 straight 1,500-yard seasons, a 13 on top of that. He did have one, 2019, less than 1,000-yard season. I'd guess that Aaron Rodgers probably got hurt that year. That'd be my guess. And then it was a 13 before that. I don't know, man. Are you taking season 11 Devontae and then to round out Broncos? No, they don't have anybody. So that's what it really boils down to for me. Are you taking season 11 Devontae, or are you taking season, what is this, A.J. Brown's season 6? It was 19 was his first season, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 20, 6. Probably got to go season 6 A.J. Brown. And, at least he's got a quarterback, and the Raiders now have Gardner Minshew. Yeah, give me A.J. Brown. So 2 of the top 5 receivers reside in the NFC East. If you want to know why NFC East fans, specifically Commanders fans, are like, bro, we got to get corners, this is why. And, oh, by the way, the Giants just drafted a guy that in 3 years could be in the same conversation too. Right? So, yeah. Better go ahead and tighten up out there on the corner, So, yeah, those are my 5 guys. In no particular order, but Justin Jefferson's at the top. You can put him wherever else you want after that. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb. Those are my top 5. What impact does Christian McCaffrey deal have on Brandon Ayuk, and why? I don't think it has much of any impact. I mean, obviously they gave money to McCaffrey, but McCaffrey means more to them than Ayuk does at this current juncture. They just drafted a guy that I think could really take Ayuk's spot. Now, again, Ayuk is a veteran. You don't want to be relying on rookies, especially when you're in a win or now type of mode where they're chasing after a chip. They haven't won one. So you can't replace Ayuk with a rookie and say, oh, we'll be fine. But in 2 to 3 years from now, I could easily see Ricky Pearsall being Brandon Ayuk. I really can see that. So does it affect him? No, not really, because from a cap situation, you can make the numbers work, right? You can make the numbers work. I think that if you're Brandon Ayuk, it just makes you feel even more like, so another dude gets paid. I get to sit back and watch another dude get bread, and I'm still over here waiting for mine. If anything, he probably feels even more disrespected, happy for his teammate, but even more like that guy just got here a year and a half ago and he's getting paid. Now, again, people don't think rationally in these situations. But again, if you're Brandon Ayuk, the man just got $38 million total on a 2-year extension. You're looking for almost $30 million per year. So again, put it in its proper context, right? It's easier to do a deal with somebody when you're paying them 19 per year versus 29 or 30 a year, which is what you're probably looking for. A little different. So I think Ayuk might be in his feelings after seeing McCaffrey get paid, but I don't think it changes what the 49ers are capable of doing, right? I don't even know the structure of the deal, but from a cap standpoint, you could argue that the 49ers might have even lowered Christian McCaffrey's cap number this year, creating more space for an Ayuk deal. I don't know the particulars of it, right? Because what they did was they gave him guaranteed money. But just because they weren't on the hook for guaranteed money and now they are, doesn't mean that the actual base salary and the cap number hasn't been lowered because of this new deal that they've signed Christian McCaffrey to, right? This 2-year extension. So they could have effectively put themselves in a position where they're now financially even in a better spot to sign Ayuk to a deal. I don't know the particular. It could be worse. They could have spent more money on that deal, and now they're in a less position to get an Ayuk deal done. But they could have easily set it up to where I'm pretty sure they're smart enough to understand, how they have to maneuver. They probably set it up to where they're in an even better position now than they were a day or two ago to get a Brandon Ayuk deal done, right? And now that the parameters have been set at the position, like with Justin Jefferson getting the deal and Jalen Waddle getting the deal and Amon-Ra St. Brown getting the deal, now you're seeing where the tiers are and where guys are slotted. It's easier to put Brandon Ayuk where he belongs. See, the problem was, where was Justin Jefferson's deal going to hit? Because that could change where Ayuk's deal fits in, right? If Jefferson had gotten to 38, well, everybody else's number goes up now, right? But because he's at 35, that slots everybody. Okay, you're not close to Justin Jefferson, so you're not getting 34. You're not getting 33. You're not better than A.J. Brown, who's, I think, at 33. So you're not getting 33. You're not getting 32, right? Now, I don't think you're getting 31 either. Amon-Ra St. Brown, over the first 3 years of his deal, is getting $28 million per. Over the first 3 years of his deal. That's where the real money is in his deal. We talk about these extensions and these deals, and we talk about the totality of it, but really the real money is in the guarantees, right? How much of this are you slated to see in the first 3 years when the deal is real money? 28 point whatever million dollars for Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's where Brandon Ayuk should be. Somewhere in that neighborhood. 30, 29 and a half. I think the 49ers are in a position to do that if they want to. And I think they ultimately will. John Perez. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, JP, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, good for JJ getting the bag, but McCarthy is going to start at quarterback for Minnesota. But is McCarthy? Yes, he is going to start at quarterback. Who else were they going to start? Sam Darnold? Don't make me laugh. Plus, my Lakers are expected to hire JJ Redick as head coach after the finals. Thoughts? Kind of talked about that already and how I felt. So I kind of killed two birds with that one stone already. But yes, Justin Jefferson has already proven that no matter who's at quarterback, he still can post big numbers. JJ McCarthy is going to be interesting because he's an Alex Smith on steroids type of quarterback. Can you post big numbers with an Alex Smith type quarterback? Let's go look at Tyreek Hill's numbers from early in his career when he wasn't really Tyreek Hill yet either, though. You got to keep that in mind, too. But so his first 2 years, 2016 rookie season, 61 catches, 593 yards. Yeah. Like I told you, he wasn't a real receiver. Like the jump that I saw from him between his second and third season was insane. Or really his first and his second year was insane. 2017, that was all Alex Smith as well. 75 catches, 1,183 yards. Yeah, you can still be a dynamic receiver with an Alex Smith type at quarterback, which is what JJ McCarthy is. But I think he's better than Alex Smith. I think he's better than that. So, yeah, I think you can put up some big numbers with him. And then he didn't really explode until Mahomes jumped in there in 2018. And that's when he got to 1,479 yards. And then the rest is history. He's been putting up pretty much big-time numbers, except for 2019. I think he was dealing with some injuries that year, so his numbers were down significantly. But every other year, it's been over 1,200 yards. And then the last two in Miami have been over 1,700 yards. So back-to-back seasons. So, yeah, he'll be fine. I don't worry about Justin Jefferson. I don't worry about him at all. The Black Al B. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Black Al B writes, Lou, my guy. What up, Black Al B? JJ has been playing the bring me my money meme since yesterday, I'm sure. LOL. He said, hey, and one more thing. Bring me my money. Yo, that's one of my favorite memes of all time. I got a new meme that's probably starting to surpass that one, but I'm not going to break that one out yet. I'll save that for a later date and time when it's pertinent. But, yo, once he's seen how the market developed, he knew, all right, I'm next. I'm seeing all these dudes getting theirs. It's time for me to get mine. And the Vikings knew they had to take care of that guy. And, you know, here's the beauty of a Justin Jefferson deal. You're not paying the quarterback anymore, which is why they couldn't do Kirk anymore, because we got to pay Justin, and we can't be paying you this inordinate amount of money. We got to let you walk, which is why they told Kirk, we want you back. But just understand, we about to draft this rookie because we can't keep paying you, right? So you can pay Justin because you got this quarterback on his rookie deal. You let Danielle Hunter walk, and instead of paying him, you know, what did he end up with? 2 years, 50-something million, so 26, I think it was, million for him. 25 and a half, I think it was 2 years, 51. So instead of paying him 25, you spread that out over like 3 different dudes, right? You went out and got the guy that left Houston. Y'all, it's almost like y'all swapped guys, because I think you got Jonathan Grenard, and I think you went and got my man from the Dolphins, who I like a lot, the linebacker / edge rusher. And I think you got one of the Texans linebackers, the white dude, if I'm not mistaken. So you went shopping, did some stuff. I think I could be mixing up my teams, but instead of you spending it on one dude, you spread it out, and then you were able to take that money that you saved from not signing Kirk and just give it to Justin Jefferson, essentially. Because what were you paying Kirk last year? Probably paying him close to $40 million last year. I don't know how much he made, but you know, Kirk been, you know, getting over for the last 6-7 years. So you just essentially say, all right, whatever we was giving Kirk, you just get at to Justin. So good for him. Good for him. Black Al B, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, I don't even know how Adams got past the gates in the neighborhood. His first 4 seasons were pedestrian. The first 4 seasons were, but afterwards, when he got his money up, you see the numbers. I already told you there was a couple of, you know, a few big time years, including that first year in Vegas, where he's putting up some big time numbers, man. It took him a little while to build up his bread to get enough money to get into that neighborhood, but he got there eventually. He got his bread up, and he became arguably the most dominant receiver in the NFL. When he left Green Bay, there weren't you could count on one hand the amount of receivers that were better than Devontae Adams. And again, you could argue that he was top 3 and he wasn't 3. You could argue that when he left Green Bay. And then when he went to Vegas and did what he did in his first year, you said, and again, that wasn't with Aaron Rodgers. So you couldn't just say, well, yeah, he's got Aaron Rodgers. That shit wasn't with Aaron Rodgers. And he still put up big time numbers. So, yeah, those first few years, I'd admit, there was a time there where Packers fans thought that he was a bust. He was a second-round pick. It's not like he was a first-round pick because they don't draft first-round receivers, as we know, in Green Bay. But he was a second-round pick, and they weren't sure if they got it right with him. But eventually, him and Aaron got on the same page, and we saw what happened. JLG, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. JLG writes, how do the Cowboys pay Dak and CD after the JJ contract? Well, look, they aren't playing. They're not going to pay Dak this year. They're going to pay CD this year, right? Because no matter who's playing quarterback, he needs somebody to throw the football to. So CD's going to get broken off, right? Because I don't think they want to go to. Because again, I talked about this the other day. You want to stagger these contracts, right? Get CD done this year, and then next year you're going to get Michael Parsons done. Dak might walk after this year. I think he's going to be back when it's all said and done. Dak will be back. The beauty is you're already paying Dak big money. He's already eating up a certain portion of your cap. So all you would be doing is replacing his current deal with a new deal. So it's not like, how are we going to pay Dak when Dak is going from making $12 or $13 million to, next year making $47 million. Dak's already making, 48, 49, whatever the number is, 50, whatever, $1 million a year. He's already making that. So that money's already allotted for Dak Prescott. So if you have to pay him next year, it might be a little bit more on top of whatever he's already making. But that number's already there. You see what I'm saying? So it's not like, how are we going to pay all these guys? They're going to be able to pay them. And the cap keeps going up. And that's why Dallas had to make some of the decisions that they made, right? They had to move on from their left tackle, let him go to the Jets because we can't pay you, right? Knowing that we got to do what we got to do with CD this year. We can't afford to pay you $16, $17, $18 million for 1 year, right? We got enough young boys that we're going to have to figure it out. But we can't pay you that because we got to pay CD, right? So they'll figure it out. That's why they couldn't pay Tony Pollard. We can't pay you, Tony. Even if it's $8 million, we got to put that money towards getting a deal done with CD. That's why we're not even messing with that. We already told that we're not signing you to nothing this year, bro. You're going to play this last year, your deal out. We'll see where we go from here, right? Because we're going to get CD done this year. We're going to get Micah done next year. And if you deserve to be paid, if you play well enough, and we got to have you back next year. Well, what if Dak gets hurt this year, like he did in 2020? And Trey Lance comes in and plays his ass off. Dallas isn't bringing him back. We got our quarterback now. You can carry your ass, right? So they may not have to pay Dak. We'll see what happens. We don't know what's to become of Dak Prescott. The likelihood is we'll be having this conversation this time next year, and Dak will still be in Dallas. That's the likelihood. But CD's going to definitely get his money. And like I said, Dak's already being paid. So it's not like they got to carve out an extra $40 million of cap space for Dak. He's already eating up probably 15, 16% of Dallas's cap. That number isn't going to change if they are to re-sign Dak next year. It'll be right in that same neighborhood. So it's not going to change all that much, if that makes sense. Joseph's Journey. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Joseph's Journey writes, people hating on Darren Waller's song. I like it, though. Joseph, I think you're in the minority there, buddy. There's a lot fundamentally wrong with that song. That's one. Two, I don't think people really like how he did Kelsey Plum. And so they're holding that against him too. And look, bad music is bad music, right? Good music is good music. And wherever that falls for you is where it falls. If you don't want to like somebody and you're on the fence about something, you're just going to lean towards how you feel about that person. So if you're not really feeling Darren Waller and you're like iffy on the song, I'm going to just lean with the side that says, I don't like it. It's trash. If you like Darren Waller and you're not sure about the song, you'll lean, it's all right. I rock with it. It's cool. I'm not really tripping about it. So it's all in really where you are on that scale with him. Most people don't like Darren Waller. I think a lot of people, if you're a Giants fan, you feel like he stole from you. One, Raiders fans were left with a pretty bad taste in their mouth and how the situation ended up after they paid him there. So I think there's a lot of scorned NFL fans left in the wake of Darren Waller. And then he's playing this song and dance about, well, I don't know if I'm going to play or not. Now it looks like he's leaning towards retirement, which most people thought he would. And, the worst part about it is a lot of athletes want to be musicians and a lot of musicians want to be athletes. And a lot of people are just like, yo, just stick to your day job, bro. How often is it that we see an athlete decide, I want to do music, like Antonio Brown, for instance? Right? Like every ball player thinks he can rap or sing or both. So this is just another example of that. And unless you like Dame Lillard or you really nice for real, it's like, yeah, just stick to your day job, bro. And you shitted on Kelsey Plum. And a lot of people are like, bro, you dummy. I always tend to not overstep my boundaries. Like I remember when everybody used to go crazy on Eric Benet. Yo, how could you not want to be with Halle Berry? You tripping. You don't know Halle Berry. You don't know how she is. You don't know how she operates and moves. Now, we later did find out Eric Benet was on some next level, like Adina Howard sex freak type shit, right? However, we've also heard that Halle Berry isn't the easiest to deal with. So you can't, just because somebody's beautiful or you really think they look good, it doesn't mean, how could you? You don't know half of it. You don't live with that person every day. So I don't know what happened with him and Kelsey Plum. Most people are betting on, outside of we know he cheated, right? But we don't know why he did that. I'm never one to try to justify cheating on somebody. If you feel that way about someone, just break it off, right? But whatever the case may be, I don't know their story, but I know a lot of people are holding that shit against him too. So pretty tough spot to be in if you're Darren Waller. I'll just say that. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy Chris writes, hey Lou, two questions, excuse me. 1 and 2. Who is your all-time greatest NBA backcourt, and where do you rank Doncic and Irving, especially if they win a championship, and why? Man, that's a loaded question. I know that Stan Van Gundy has kind of opened up this debate during the Western Conference Finals. He reiterated this. He had said it before. This wasn't the first time he had said this. It's on a much bigger scale now, because he could have said that on a random, Wednesday night, Thursday night, because he works for TNT. So he could have said that on a random Thursday night in February, and nobody would have been paying attention that he said, this Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving backcourt is one of the best I've ever seen in my life. It's the best. It's the greatest backcourt ever. He could have said that, on February 24th, and nobody even, batted an eye because there weren't as many people watching. Now you say that 15 times during the Western Conference Finals when everybody's watching. Now it's gaining a little bit of traction, and you're seeing what they're doing. Nobody's denying the talents of, I told you, Luka Doncic this early in his career is as cold-blooded an assassin as I've ever seen. So that's one. And then Kyrie Irving might be the most skilled basketball player we've ever seen. So when you put those two things together, it's a pretty dynamic backcourt. We've had some pretty dynamic backcourts back in the day, but from a skills perspective, does anybody even come close to this backcourt? I mean, think about some of the better ones you've seen. And I grew up in an era where the backcourts were Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas and Jeff Hornacek and John Stockton. Like, you needed a white dude that could shoot, or one of your guards had to be able to shoot, and the other one needed to play, or it could be the same guy, needed to play great defense, like Gary Payton, right? Joe Dumars is one of the best perimeter defenders of his era, right? Jeff Hornacek could shoot, and Stockton was a really good defender, right? And Stockton could shoot the lights out of the basketball, right? Like, those are the backcourts I grew up on. None of them were really dynamic. You know, you had a role, you played it. If you were a point guard, you set the table for the offense. You ran the show. You were the floor general, right? The two guard played off of you, played off the ball a lot of times, probably was going to be your defender, could shoot it a little bit. It evolved, obviously, over time. But, I mean, you think about the backcourts, you're not going to find a backcourt more talented than these two. First of all, whose point guard or shooting guard is 6'9", 6'10"? Who's doing that? Whose two guard is doing that? Whose two guard is that big and dribbling the ball and facilitating and shooting and doing everything like Luka does? Name another guy. You know, Magic Johnson, there's a select few of guys who could do the things that Luka Doncic does. But not at that size. There are not many. The list is very short. And then there's Kyrie Irving, right? One of the greatest ball handlers we've ever seen. Probably the best finisher around the rim. I don't know if I've ever seen a guy use his offhand, the left hand, the way that Kyrie Irving does. Hook shots, floaters, off the glass with English. This is both hands we're talking about. Like, guys aren't doing that. Are you serious? Like, there's guys that can use their offhand well. This guy has mastered how to shoot with his offhand. Like, the skill that takes. Yeah, no, I hate to be a prisoner of the moment, but I think that's a pretty safe assumption and argument to make at this point, that this is the most talented. Now, greatest and talented might be two different discussions, because greatest might be who won the most. Well, what backcourt got it done the most could be considered greatest. You're talking about most talented. It's these two, and it's not close. It's these two. You start talking greatest, then that enters into a different discussion, because that's a more vague description. You could use different metrics and barometers for greatest, right? Talented is exactly that. Talent. You're not going to find a more talented backcourt than Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. So you said greatest. I mean, you could go in a lot of different directions, man. You could go all the way back to the 70s and the 60s with some of those, you know, backcourts with some of these dudes that a lot of us never watched but heard of, and they were lights out. And you could go, man, that was a hell of a backcourt. 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 But I mean, hell, you know, growing up, Terry Porter and Clyde Drexler was a hell of a backcourt, right? They weren't the greatest, obviously, but, you know, again, you could go in a lot of different directions with greatest. I think Kyrie and Luka are the most talented. I'll say that. To say they're the greatest, does a disservice to dudes who spent 8, 9 seasons together and won 2, 3 championships together. That's tough, right? I think you do a disservice to some of those dudes, right? Some of those duos and groups that put in that time together and play well off one another. But talent-wise, those dudes can't be matched. I think everybody would agree with that. All right. All right. So we already hit the 145 mark. So I don't want this to go too much further over. So we're just going to go ahead and hit to our last segment of the show. And that's garbage time. So I am kind of torn about this upcoming NFL season. Okay, I'll save that for another show. CJ Stroud was on a podcast recently, and we'll just talk about this and get out of here. He said, and he's been saying some pretty outlandish things this offseason. I don't know if you've been following CJ Stroud, but he's been in this bag because, you know, when you have the success that he had this past season, it opens up a lot of doors and avenues. Remember, a lot of people were discounting him last year. People were, talking about him being an Ohio State quarterback and what that's meant over the years. You know, people were talking about that score from that one test that he took that was proved to be erroneous, but nonetheless, people were holding that against him briefly. Remember, there was a time where Will Levis was supposed to be ahead of him, and people were, quote unquote, souring on CJ Stroud. You go from all that conversation and all that talk to him winning NFL Rookie of the Year offensively, leading his team to not only a division title in year one, a playoff win in year one, but really doing it in a way that we've really never seen a rookie quarterback do it in. Over 4,000 yards passing, led the NFL in yards per game. Or was it yards per attempt or completion? One of those categories that you don't generally see a rookie leading the NFL in. I think it was yards per game because he missed 2 or 3 games this season and still got over 4,000 yards, which, kind of shows you what he was doing. 20 some odd touchdowns, like 23 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions or something like that. So put up some gaudy numbers and really established himself as one of the better quarterbacks, going into his second season in the NFL. Really gave the Texans the confidence to go out and make the moves that they made this offseason to try to go all in. So he's been pretty loud and boisterous this offseason. I get it. So he's on a podcast recently, and he told this group of dudes he was kicking it with that if Matthew Stafford had been in the same situations that Aaron Rodgers was in, he would have won multiple Super Bowls instead of just the one that Aaron Rodgers has. And one of the dudes literally fell out on like the floor, or it was like an ottoman in front of him, and he fell out in front of it. And those dudes were losing their shit. And they were like, "Are you serious?" And CJ Stroud is sitting there with a straight face, like, "Yeah, I don't know what the hell y'all doing all that shit for. I'm dead ass." And he started to try to explain himself. And it just got me to thinking, I used to be one of the biggest Aaron Rodgers apologists that there were. But Rip Meest Sean Taylor says Bron and Wade, but Bron isn't a guard. LeBron James is a forward. So you can't put them like LeBron James isn't a 2 guard. He's never been a 2 guard. He'll never be a 2 guard. He's a 3, right? He's a forward. So I don't think that he would qualify for a backcourt. So I think it's got to be. And Eric Sunderland said we're forgetting about Steph and Clay, and that's a hell of a backcourt. And that's when I say they're not more talented than Kyrie and Luka. But if you're talking greatest, that's what happens. And that's why I said I don't want to say greatest. I won't do that because I'd have to sit down and think. But that's a great one. That's a great point, Eric. Steph and Clay accomplished so much more, and they were so prolific in their roles. Steph is the greatest shooter of all time, and Clay is probably top 5 greatest shooter of all time in the NBA history. And what they did together will probably never be duplicated. So greatest for Kyrie and Luka, I struggle with the word greatest because again, there are different barometers. Anybody could look at greatest and say, well, my metric is for greatest is this, championships, all-star games or whatever. Talent, there's no discussion, right? We know what talent means, and there's never been a more talented backcourt. So if you say it that way, no arguments. I don't think you can even have a debate. There's no discussion. There's a period there. Let's move on. You say greatest, that's a question mark. Now we can have a discussion because there are different metrics for everyone when you say greatest. Steph and Clay definitely are in that conversation without question, Eric. That's a good pull because I wasn't even thinking about them. And I was trying to think about some recent ones and totally skipped over them. And that would be the perfect, like, if we're going with the talented versus greatest conversation, that is the perfect way to say this is why it's different. If you're talking greatest, Steph and Clay right there. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Sorry for that interruption, but I had to do it while it was in front of my face. So CJ Stroud said that if Matthew Stafford had been put in Aaron Rodgers' place, because we as you know, Aaron Rodgers has been to the NFC Championship game like 7-8 times. And he's only been to the Super Bowl. What? Is it once? Yeah, once. But he's been to the NFC Championship game like 6 or 7 times. Let's see if we can count the ones we can remember. So obviously he won that one year when they made it to the Super Bowl. They should have went back. I think it was 14 against Seattle with the onside kick, but they didn't recover it and lost the game in overtime. That wasn't his fault, but that still goes on his resume. 2016, he put the team on his back. I don't think Stafford could have done that. That was the game where he beat Dallas with the Jared Cook throw, moving to his left, throws a dart 40 yards down the field, as Cook is like standing with his feet, his toes on the sidelines, and he throws a frozen rope. They should have never even been in that position. Aaron Rodgers had torched the Cowboys defensively that day, and they should have won that game going away like the Packers beat them this year in the playoffs. Instead, the defense gave up 8 million points in the second half and made it close, and Rodgers had to go do that thing that he does at times, and they won that game. But he took them to the NFC Championship game. And the Falcons were the team that year, filleted them in the NFC Championship game. Then you had the 2 years, I think they went against the 49ers back-to-back years. I want to say it was 18 or 19. No, they went 2 years in a row. 19 against the 49ers got smoked. 20, they should have won. That's the one where I look. The 14 and 20 are the two where I go, you ain't shit. Now, 14 wasn't his fault. I don't put that in his lap. But I put 20 right at his feet, like, bro. And then, there are also the years like 2021, I believe it was, where they lost to San Francisco in the divisional round as the number 1 seed and they let the 49ers come in there and beat them. Like, what are we doing right now? Right. So the year they made it, 14, 16, back-to-back years in 19 and 20, that's 5. I think he made it one more time after that. Let's see. Did they make it in 21? No, that's the year they lost to the 49ers in that cold game in the divisional round when they were the number 1 seed coming off of a bye. And then 22 was his last year in Green Bay, and in 23 he got hurt. So he's been to 5 NFC championship games, I think. I could be missing one early in his career. And he's only made it to Super Bowl 1 time. And so Stroud is like, if you put Matthew Stafford in that situation, I bet you he's got more than 1 Super Bowl appearance, and he's probably got more than 1 Super Bowl ring. He's probably got multiple titles. Huh. Interesting. I don't believe that. I don't buy that for 1 second. Stafford has some tough luck in Detroit, but he's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not Aaron Rodgers. So I can't do it. I can't co-sign that one. And a lot of people were giving him flack for that. Some people's like, he's right. And I'm like, nah, bro. Nah. I think he was saying that more to kind of big up Matthew Stafford than he was to take a shot at Aaron Rodgers. But whether that's what the intent was or not, bro, you just took a veiled shot at Aaron Rodgers. Whether you were trying to, if that was the intent or not, you just took a shot at Aaron Rodgers. It is what it is. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't believe that. I'm just happy that Stafford did get his 1 ring, so people can kind of give him the credit and respect that he deserves throughout his career, because without that ring, we probably would look at him in the same vein that we do Phillip Rivers and it's one more quarterback with no ring, but had a hell of a career. And Matt Ryan. I think we would have put him in that same category. And I really believe Phillip Rivers, I've said this, but I think the numbers might suggest something else. I just think Phillip Rivers was just better than Matt Ryan. I think Stafford was better than Phillip Rivers. And when you look at the numbers, Stafford is already in the top 10 of most statistical categories and in the top 5 in some of those categories as well. So, I don't know. That was a bit of a hot take by CJ Stroud. But Rodgers is on a different level. It's easy to not like Aaron Rodgers as a person. I think people take that approach with Rodgers. And I just brought that up when it came to Darren Waller. Like, if I don't like you personally, if I don't really like what you stand for as a person, it's easy for me to hate on your career. You know, it's easy for me to hate on something that you're associated with. Don't ever lose the sight of the fact that Aaron Rodgers was that guy. The only thing that he doesn't have to validate his success, which is why I think he needs this last Super Bowl with the Jets. He needs one more. Just like, even though Peyton ain't do shit with the Broncos that last year, doesn't matter. He got 2 Super Bowl rings. Do you know what that did for his legacy? Do you know how that changed drastically the way you view Peyton Manning versus, like, he had the same amount of rings as Drew Brees. And his brother Eli would have more than him if he didn't get that second one. It changed the way you viewed Peyton Manning's career. When you say, oh yeah, Peyton had 2 of them things. Changes it drastically versus, oh, he just had 1. I think Aaron needs 1 more for his legacy. If you want to get back into the discussion of, after Brady, who's the best quarterback of that generation, you could have a discussion that it's Rodgers, not Manning, if you get to 2. And unlike Manning, who got his second one based off of the Broncos defense, Rodgers will be a huge part of whatever happens with the Jets. And you'll be able to put yourself in that same conversation with Brady and Manning that, hey, my second act was just as legendary as my first act, and I was able to take another NFL organization to a chip and win a ring. Not many guys can say that. Rodgers would love to add his name to that list. So anyway, excuse me, I digress. And a lot of people argue, and I know I feel this way. If Rashad Mendenhall doesn't fumble in the Super Bowl against the Packers, Rodgers doesn't have a Super Bowl championship. The Steelers should have went back-to-back. I believe they had gotten there the year before, and that was the Arizona win. And then they got back the next year, and they should have won that one too. They dominated that game until the Rashad Mendenhall fumble. Everything changed after that. So he got lucky. I'll just say that. But luck counts too. Luck counts as well. So I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. Thank you guys for joining me. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys. I see y'all having a conversation down in the comment section about, the backcourt thing. I think the greatest challenge to that would be Steph and Clay. And you see how I see somebody else down here. I see how somebody else said, I completely forgot about Steph and Clay. It's so easy to do that. I did that, which is why I don't like, making like lists and stuff on the fly. A lot of times it's easy to do it in the NFL because you can go through the teams. And if it's a position like I just did with the receivers, right? You quickly just go through all the teams in the league and make sure you're not forgetting anybody. It's hard to do it in the NBA because there's so many players and you're going over, a lot of different things that you got to try to, because it's almost positionless basketball and all of that stuff. But we know what positions we try to put dudes in. Like LeBron's not a guard. He's a forward. So anyway, I digress. So I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. We won't have a podcast until after. I'm hoping Friday, maybe. I won't guarantee that we'll have one, but we won't have another one before the finals. I'll just give you my prediction right now. I expect the Mavericks to win one of the first two games. I wouldn't be shocked if it's game one. I wouldn't be shocked if it's game one. I could see them going in there and stealing game one, and then the Celtics bouncing back and winning game two. With Porzingis not having played basketball in an NBA game since the opening round of the NBA playoffs, I'll say that the Mavericks sneak game one. If Celtics don't shoot it well, Mavericks come in there, they make just enough plays, sneak out of there with a 3-point victory. And then the Celtics kind of rally back and win. And I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't blow them out in game two, like beat them by a comfortable amount after knocking down like 22 threes in game two, right? So I think I see something like that transpiring in the first couple games. We'll be back. The more likely scenario is we'll be back on the other side of the weekend, so Monday. And by then, we would have had 2 games of the NBA Finals. So then we'll kind of have some discussions that we talk about, adjustments that could be made as they shift the series to Dallas. And, what have we seen already? What are some things that these teams have taken advantage of? And do we feel any different about the series having watched the first 2 games than going into the series, right? So we'll be able to have all those conversations. If any more contracts happen, we'll be able to have those discussions as well. I wouldn't be shocked if another receiver got paid or somebody else got some big time money. I honestly think it'll be closer to July when you see those deals get done, closer to the start of training camp. Maybe even in the training camp, a CeeDee Lamb doesn't get paid until right up until that deadline, right? So we'll see, right? But anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 423rd installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I thank you guys for joining me. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys. And if you're a Washington Commanders fan, we will be live tomorrow night. We will hear from head coach Dan Quinn. We will hear from probably some of the players tomorrow. I'd love it if we hear from Joe Witt Jr. We'll see when we finally, I should say, get to hear from him. But we'll hear from some of the players. We'll have some things to talk about tomorrow, in addition to some of the topics that are already floating around regarding the Washington Commanders. So until then, you guys take care. God bless. Good night.